When I was a young man, I carried my pack, and I lived the free life of a rover. From Mary's green basin to the dusty outback, I waltzed my Matilda all over. Then in 1915, my country said, son, it's time to stop rambling, there's work to be done. So they gave me a tin hat and they gave me a gun. And they sent me away to the war. Now, no more I'll go waltzing Matilda. Let's see if we're going live on the phone. Just checking that it's happening. Seems to be. Well, might pull a few chapters from this over the weekend just because I feel like it. This bit here from the Oral History of Vietnam, compiled by Christian G. Appy, is a story by a fellow named Larry Heinman. It says, a lifelong Chicagoan, he arrives at the coffee shop in jeans and a Jack Kerouac t-shirt. A spiral notebook under one arm. He is suffering from a hacking cough. I've really got to quit smoking. In Vietnam, he drove an armored personnel carrier in a mechanized battalion of the 25th Infantry Division from 1967 to 1968. In 1987, he won the National Book Award for Paco's Story, a novel about the lone American survivor of a Vietnam firefight. We lost the war because the Vietnamese just flat out beat us, and we lost the war because we didn't understand that they were poets. That's true. In 1990, I went back to Vietnam for the first time. There was a literary conference in Hanoi. At one of the lunches, I sat next to this little bitty guy who turned out to be a professor of American literature at Hanoi University, Professor Nguyen Lien. I asked him what he did during the war, and this is the story he told me. He said that his job was to go to Beijing and learn English, and then go to Moscow University to read and study American literature. Then he went back to Hanoi and out to the Ho Chi Minh Trail and gave lectures on American literature to the troops traveling south. It was not like a 6-week survey, just an afternoon. But he talked to them about Whitman, Jack London, Hemingway, Faulkner, Fitzgerald. A lot of Vietnamese soldiers carry translations of American literature in their packs. Lee Min Kyu, see pages 508 to 511. A young woman who worked on the Ho Chi Minh Trail disarming unexploded bombs, carried Ernest Hemingway. Professor Lien asked me this question. Now, what Vietnamese literature did the American military teach you? I laughed so hard I almost squirted beer up my nose. I told Professor Lien that I would have been surprised if the U.S. Army had given us classes in American literature. I grew up in a house where there were no books, and when you graduated high school, you were told to get a job. I was the only one of 4 brothers who said, well, I'd really like to go to college. So I went to a small junior college in Evanston, right across the street from Northwestern, but I ran out of money and had to quit. That's when I got drafted. Nobody told me I could go to Canada. Nobody told me I could phony up the physical. The word in my house was, go into the Army, it'll make a man out of you. When I got back from Vietnam, I went to an arts college in Chicago, Columbia. It's this rinky-dink little mom-and-pop sort of hip pocket operation. All you needed was a high school diploma and a checkbook. I took a writing class because I thought I was going to be it was a snap A and I wasn't going to have to work. The first night of the class, I will never forget. We sat down, and the teacher hauled out this crummy little old book, so old and beat up you couldn't see the title on the front. And he reads this story about these guys on a ship, and all of a sudden they see this whale, and everybody jumps into boats, and they row out, and a guy named Stubb kills the whale. It was a body count story. He read this, and I got up, and I said, what book is that? He said, Moby Dick. I thought, before I read anything else, I have to read Moby Dick. It's about a lot of things, but it's also about a shitty job. There's a reason why the passing of this kind of work is not mourned. This was butchery, and these were huge animals, and they fought back. That's where I got the idea of talking about war in terms of work. In Vietnam, I drove an APC, an armored personnel carrier, a track. In the most perverse kind of American teenage way, the tracks were great fun. They were these huge, ugly, loud, nasty-looking things. 13 tons, and nobody fucked with us. We had this idea that we were the king of the fucking hill. God, they were great fun to drive. 30 miles an hour top end, and we drove them top end flat out all the time. There were only 10 of them in our platoon, but we sounded like a million. We never surprised anyone. You could hear these things coming all day. You're 18 years old, and you take a big, loud machine, drive it into town, park it anywhere you want. There isn't a Vietnamese cop within 1,000 miles of you that's going to give you a ticket, and if an MP had tried, we would have beat him up. We ran people off the road. We boomed into backcountry hamlets, pushing over trees as big around as you can reach. We felt invincible. On my track, some asshole had painted a bullseye right behind my seat. The track is made out of an 1.25 inch aluminum alloy armor plate. The Vietnamese had these dynamite anti-tank weapons called RPG, rocket-propelled grenades. An RPG will go through an 1.25 inch armor plate like spit through a screen. Our tracks were gasoline-powered. 90 gallons of gasoline. A gallon of gasoline is equal to 19 pounds of TNT, and a gallon of gasoline has enough energy to lift 1,000 pounds, 1,000 feet into the air instantly. Don't fuck with gasoline. You got 90 gallons here, and if an RPG hits the bullseye, you go up like the head of a match, and there's a mine in the road, and the mine goes off right under you. The driver just gets popped right out of the hatch. The driver is in the track from the neck down. Everybody else is sitting up top. If anything happens, the driver always dies. You're driving around with your asshole puckered the whole fucking time. January 1st, 1968 was the worst night of my life. We had just worked all night. It was a place called Suoi Kut, about a quarter of a mile from the Cambodian border, straight north from the Nua Ba Den, Black Virgin Mountain. We were on the side of the village, but there was nothing there, and there hadn't been anything there for a long time. This was the first time we'd fought NVA, actual North Vietnamese issue troops. These were not Southern Viet Cong. These guys were coming out of the woods, 5, 6, 8 guys at a time, just running right into the teeth of this amazing firefight, and it lasted all fucking night. They told us later it was the 272nd NVA Regiment, which was about 1,500 guys, and we killed 500. It was ugly. The thing I most remember was the morning. The sun came up, and the smoke cleared, and the dew burned away. There was meat everywhere, and the wood line looked like ruined drapes. Everything was covered with dust and looked antique. Halfway through the morning, someone came down and said we had to clean up because Westmoreland was coming out to inspect the thing. All we wanted to do was clean our guns, smoke some grass, and go take a nap. We'd been up all night. We had a bulldozer, and this bulldozer digs a ditch. The guys from the line company started picking up bodies and throwing them into the ditch. They did it like you do lasagna. There was a layer of bodies, then a layer of quicklime, then a layer of bodies, and then a layer of quicklime, and then a layer of bodies. Later in the morning, I remember the stretcher bearers coming up from the road from the south. They had been sent out to look for the guys from Bravo Company who had gone out the night before to set up an ambush. They all got killed. They came in on the stretchers with their arms sort of flopped over the side. These guys were stiff as a fucking board. My youngest brother, Philip, and I were in Vietnam at the same time. My mother let him drop out of high school when he was 17 and join the Marine Corps. There's a regulation that two brothers didn't have to serve at the same time in Vietnam, but he volunteered. In 1967, everyone in the Marine Corps volunteered or they'd beat the shit out of you until you did. He got wounded and I tried to go see him up in Da Nang. I put in for an emergency leave. I went to see the Red Cross guy and said, I have this letter. My brother's wounded and I want to see him. This motherfucker knew that all it was going to take was one phone call. He just dicked around for 3 weeks, and when I finally got up to Da Nang, Philip had already gone home. Months later, during the Tet Offensive, the Red Cross guy got blown up by a mortar. Everybody but me was sad that he died. Philip and I were very close. I was closer to him than than my other two brothers. When I got home, I didn't know what to say. I came back without a scratch. He was deaf in one ear and his eye was all red and dripping this stuff, but he recovered enough to go back on active duty and they sent him back for a second tour. When he got orders to go back, I went to see a lawyer in Chicago. They knew who I was. My grandfather had been a lawyer on LaSalle Street and he'd only been dead a few years. I went into the office of an ex-Marine Corps colonel from the Judge Advocate General's office. I said, "Look, my brother's going back to Vietnam for a second time, and I want to know who I have to pay and how much to get these orders changed. I don't want any Marine Corps bullshit. My brother's already been wounded. I've been there once, and enough is enough. I want to find out from you in the name of my grandfather what you can do for me." A couple weeks later, he called back and said there was nothing he could do. For some reason, my mother told Philip that I had gone to a lawyer, and he got really pissed off. That's why he and I never spoke for 10 years. It was just like this thing between us. It was just like a corpse in the house. I could not bring myself to write my brother the whole time he was there. I did not want to see a letter come back with a big red stamp that says deceased. It's one of the serious regrets of my life that I didn't write him. My brother came back from his second tour in 1970. He drove a bus. My dad was a bus driver and got him a job driving for the company. He got married, had 2 kids, and then got divorced. And it's a long, dumb story, but around 1980, he disappeared. And no one has seen him since. It's not one of those things you like to dwell on. He was just not equipped to deal with this and took off. We tried to get the Salvation Army to locate him. They have a locator service. But the rule is they tell the person they're trying to locate that you are looking for them, and it's their choice whether to get in touch with you. We did that twice. Both times they came back and said, we've located him, but he doesn't want to be in contact. Something happened to him in the war that he just can't get around. There are a lot of guys like Philip who just bumped up against the war like a fly on a screen. The war was devastatingly brutal. This happens after every war. And it really does depend on every individual's inner resources. After living in this wallow, how do you come out and reconnect with your own humanity? Is it possible to love someone knowing that you have done all these things and are capable of all these things and have seen all these things? These are the dark things on your heart. I had asked a doctor once if there were actually dark places on your heart. He said that when you get a heart attack, part of the heart muscle dies. It becomes like a bruise and turns dark. The dark places on my heart are not going away.